All right. In this video, we're going to consider a specific meta-ethical question, namely, can there be objective moral facts? So what is meta-ethics? Well, just as metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that seeks to understand, let's say, the basic nature of reality, like what the world's made of, what it contains, is it finite, is it infinite? Metaethics is the branch of ethics that seeks to understand the basic nature of morality. So it asks questions like, where does morality come from? Does it come from God, or from culture, or from society, or from evolution, or rationality, or emotion? What constitutes moral knowledge? What do we mean when we say that we know something is unethical, or that something is morally good, or fair, or unjust? And are there objective moral facts? This will be the question that we'll focus on for this video. All right, in order to understand the question of whether or not there are objective moral facts, we need to understand the idea of objectivity, and it's best illustrated, let's say, by contrasting it with subjectivity. So this distinction between objectivity and subjectivity is about the truth and justification of a proposition. So you can think of a proposition just as a basic statement that can have a truth value. And there are many, many propositions. For example, Joe Biden is the US president. It's a proposition, and it has a truth value. It can be true or false. So the distinction about objectivity and subjectivity is a distinction about how we come to view and validate specific propositions and the way in which they hold for us. When a proposition is objective, it's true in a particular kind of way. So when we say that a proposition is objectively true, we mean that it's true independent of our attitude towards it. It's, in other words, a fact. When we say that something is true independent of our attitude toward it, what we mean is that our opinion about the fact can't change it. So water freezes at 32 degrees is objectively true because it's true regardless of what we think about it. Suppose, for example, we all wanted water to freeze at 40 degrees because we all really liked snow. So if it froze at a higher temperature, hypothetically, we would get more snow. Well, all of our collective wishing that it would freeze at a higher temperature couldn't change it because the proposition is true independent of our attitude towards it. And that seems to be because it's expressing something about our physical reality, which is detached from the human mind. There's a sense in which water freezes at 32 degrees is true even if there weren't ever any human beings here to understand it or to express it, because it expresses a physical fact about the world. Likewise, there's an objective fact about how many black holes there are in the universe. There's some number of them. We don't know that number, but there is a number, and there's a fact about it. That fact holds true independent of our attitude or our ideas about black holes. Meanwhile, when we say that a proposition is subjective, we mean that it's a matter of taste or opinion. So it expresses something about our individual attitudes towards a thing. So the painting is beautiful expresses my view that the painting that's in front of my eyes is elegant or portrays with accuracy some beautiful real world event or is constructed in a way that I believe is beautiful. And the statement, sauce is delicious with capers in it, is also seems to be subjective in the sense that some people might not like sauce with capers and some people might like it. And supposing there's a disagreement about whether the sauce with the capers in it is delicious seems to be besides the point. There's no final answer to the question of whether or not sauce with capers is delicious. It just seems to express one person's attitude towards the object, sauce with capers. So there does seem to be a realm of subjectivity Typically, this is thought to be matters of taste or opinion, so maybe music or art or food. Um, these are areas where people have different tastes or opinions, and there's no sense in which we could resolve the disagreement between people who view it differently. So, in philosophy, there's just a general debate regarding which propositions are objective and what it means for something to be objective, and which are subjective, and how we can know the difference. In other words, how can we decipher which things are objectively true and which things are merely subjective? Metaethical question. So, moving into metaethics with that distinction in mind, there's a bunch of important questions that are interrelated that we'll be focusing on. So, are there objective moral judgments about right and wrong? So, this means if there are objective moral judgments, then there are facts about morality which hold independent of our attitudes towards it. Which is to say, for example, the proposition murder is wrong is true, and it's true independent of our attitude towards it. So it would be true that murder is wrong even if we disagreed with it, or even if we never came to understand it, or even if we never had the language to express it. That's what it means when there's an objective fact. So an objective moral fact would be just like that. It would be a fact about the world that we discover. We discover the facts about morality. We discover, for example, that the violation of private property is maybe unethical. But supposing there are objective moral judgments, this raises conceptual worries. Like, where do objective moral judgments come from? How do they arise? Where do we find them? Why are they here? And in particular, why are they here and independent of human minds? Since it does seem to be that human minds are very good at expressing and thinking about, reflecting on moral judgments. So why would they be true independent of our attitude, given that they seem to be a fundamentally human thing? On the other hand, if there aren't objective moral judgments, if there aren't facts of the matter, we might worry that this means that anything goes, since there's no facts about it. All right, so just some more statements about metaethics. If morality is objective, this will mean that there are facts about right and wrong. And the implication about this is really serious. It would follow that some people are simply wrong about matters of right and wrong. Because on topics of ethics and morality, there is significant disagreement. Right? There's disagreement about the death penalty, about abortion, about the right to use drugs, about the permissibility of warfare. These are all moral matters, and there are disagreements about them. If there's a fact about each of those topics, then some people are just wrong. They're misunderstanding the issue, which might be the case. Maybe some people are just wrong. But we should still wonder, why would there be truths like this about morality which are wholly independent of our mind, that just come from nature itself or from the universe? Why would that have occurred? All right, Mackie's going to look at this set of questions, and he's going to take a particular view on it. He's going to argue against moral realism. So, for simplicity's sake, we can just say that moral realism is the view that there are objective moral facts. There are, various versions of realism. There are different realisms that say different things. We're just going to address the most bland version of the view. There are facts about morality which are objective. In arguing against moral realism, Mackie is going to establish his so-called error theory, which is a particular view about moral realism, which I will describe. And he's going to argue against moral realism and then in favor of his error theory using two separate arguments. And these are how he describes the arguments: the argument from relativity and the argument from queerness. All right, so we'll look at both of those. Right, establishing his error theory. Mackie's going to argue that moral realism is false, and that would entail that there are no objective moral facts. the same time, though, he wants to address the common intuition that there are moral facts. In other words, he's going to say, look, I don't think there are moral facts, but it's pretty common that people think there are moral facts. It's a common intuition people possess. So he's going to try to address the psychological propensity to favor moral realism. He's going to identify this idea that we are attracted to the idea that there are moral facts, that it seems intuitive to us. And this is going to be contained within his error theory. All right, so here's just a general statement of his error theory. When people make moral judgments, when they make moral proclamations, when they say something's right or wrong, Mackie thinks that they take themselves to be articulating moral facts about right and wrong. So he thinks that when people say theft is bad, or murder is wrong, or you shouldn't lie, they're not just stating their own opinion. He thinks that they view themselves as pointing to facts about theft and lying and murdering, and not just expressing their own views. So the first part of his error theory is that he thinks people intend to state or point to moral facts about right and wrong. And when they do that, they do so in error, because there are no moral facts. And that's why it's an error theory. So Mackie's view is not simply that moral realism is false, such that there aren't moral facts. Additionally, it's that people think that moral realism is true and that it's psychologically attractive. And so they're always making this error by taking themselves to be articulating moral facts. And it's an error because ultimately there aren't moral facts. So, he thinks that moral realism is false, but he also thinks it's culturally significant. All right, so why make this error? Why does Mackie think we are susceptible to this error? All right. He thinks we make the error of supposing our moral proclamations express moral facts due to our temptation towards what he calls objectification. So he thinks we're tempted to objectify the world that we live in. He means something specific about this. He says, look, according to his view, we experience the objects of the world in specific ways. So, I experience the food as tasty, for example. I experience the sauce with capers as tasty. That's my experience of it. That's my specific experience of it. And when I have that experience, Mackie says, I apply that experience onto the object itself. So I say of the sauce, it has the quality tastiness. Mackie thinks we don't say, I'm experiencing the sauce as tasty. He thinks we say, the sauce is tasty. It has the quality inherent within it that we call tastiness. So he says, look, for example, when we experience the fungus in the woods as foul, we apply the quality foulness to the fungus itself, as if that quality naturally belongs to the fungus. So we are objectifying the object. We are applying our experience to the object itself, not making the distinction between our experience of the object and the object as it really is. Likewise, when we experience a kind of action, like being lied to, as bad or unfair or harmful, we apply the quality of badness to the action itself, as if that quality naturally belongs to it. So when we experience someone lying to us, on his view, we don't just say, I experienced that lie as bad. Instead, he thinks we say, the lie was bad itself. It has the quality of badness. So again, we're objectifying the world. We're objectifying the aspects of the world that we experience. I objectify the fungus by applying my experience of it being foul to it, as if it has the quality foulness itself. I objectify the act of lying by applying my experience of its badness to the action itself. So that's how he articulates this idea of the error. But he needs to back this up, because he needs to show that we are making the error. So he needs to show that there aren't moral facts. That's really his main agenda here. And he has two arguments against realism, two arguments against the idea that there are moral facts. The first is called the argument from relativity. The argument from relativity is based on the fact that across the globe, across the planet, and indeed really within individual societies like here in the United States, there are widespread disagreements regarding right and wrong. So you survey the planet about the rightness or wrongness of um, women being in the workplace, or abortion, or the death penalty, or labor relations, you're going to find significant ethical disagreement. So the argument from relativity gets off the ground based on an empirical presence, an empirical premise. It says, look, it's empirically true that people have different moral views on a wide variety of topics. Now, he says, regarding this fact, this empirical fact, namely that there are significant moral disagreements, we should ask, what best explains the widespread disagreement about moral matters? In other words, what's the best account of why there is such widespread disagreement? This is going to help us think through the possibility of there being facts. Because you should note, there's a fact about what temperature water freezes at. And it's the result of that fact that there aren't widespread disagreements about what temperature water freezes at. There aren't disagreements at all about that. So at first glance at least, it seems like where there are facts, there is less disagreement. So what is the best explanation for the observed widespread moral disagreement? There are two possible explanations, at least. The first would be that many people happen to be wrong about many moral questions. So if there are moral facts and there is moral disagreement, then some people just have to be wrong. And so one way to explain the widespread disagreement is just to say that many people are wrong-headed about moral matters. And we could then give an account about how people get ethics wrong. And we might want to do that. I think one reason to resist that temptation may be having to do with the toleration of different opinions. Another option is to just say, look, there are no moral facts, such that there is no way to resolve ethical disagreements. So the reason there's disagreement about moral facts is that there really aren't any. Just as the reason there is disagreement about the tastiness of the sauce with capers is that there's no fact about the tastiness of the sauce with capers. There's just a diversity of opinion about the tastiness of sauce with capers, let's say. Mackie thinks the best explanation for this cultural relativity about morality, this widespread disagreement about morality across cultures, across groups, is just the lack of final moral facts. I think what he has in mind here is the idea that, in general, facts seem to correct false beliefs. Maybe not entirely, but they do seem to, over time, have a corrective role, or a corrective function. Well, people once believed, for example, that the Earth was flat. And this belief was mostly eliminated by contemporary science. There are some holdouts, of course. So, facts seem to correct false beliefs over time. And so, facts would play a role in reducing disagreement because it would eliminate certain beliefs, the false ones. So, supposing there were moral facts, these would play a role in correcting false beliefs, which in turn would lead to more agreement. This doesn't seem to be happening. Indeed, at least here in the US, there seems to be less agreement than ever. So this is evidence that there aren't moral facts, because moral facts, like facts in general, would play a role in correcting our beliefs. And as they corrected their beliefs, we would have more agreement, because there would be fewer positions to believe. All right. So that's his first way of establishing the idea that there aren't moral facts. If there were moral facts, there would be less disagreement. But there is widespread disagreement, so there must not be moral facts. All right, the next argument is called the argument from queerness. And this is about Mackie looking at the nature of moral facts. Here he's asking the question, well, what would moral facts be? What would they be like? And where would they come from? Why would there be facts about right and wrong? In the same way that there are facts about, let's say, the general nature of physics or the fundamental nature of the universe. So he says, supposing there are moral facts, these would be especially unusual aspects of reality. Here I think we should return to scientific facts in order to maybe draw the contrast. When we say that water freezes at 32 degrees, we are expressing details about the chemical makeup and structure of water. So the fact about water freezing derives wholly just from the physical world we live in. We are gaining insights into the physical world through the statement, water freezes at 32 degrees. And the physical world is external to us. So, regarding moral facts, we should ask, why would a physical world give rise to specific facts about right and wrong which exist independent of the human mind? In other words, the fact about water freezing at 32 degrees belongs to the world. It's already embedded in the world. It's a description of the world as it is, independent of us. Again, if human beings weren't here, the water would still freeze when it got cold. Why would, alongside facts about water freezing, would there be facts that arise from the universe that we live in about the rightness and wrongness of specific actions? Why would the world, or the universe, independent of the human mind, already contain within it a fact about the badness of murder or the wrongness of theft? At bottom, it seems like the physical world is indifferent to the ideas of right and wrong. It's governed by causal physical laws. It's not making judgments at all whatsoever. And morality seems to be about making judgments rather than expressing facts. A better explanation for the source of morality is just that it's conducive to social relations, and human beings create specific moralities within specific cultural settings. In other words, societies function better where there is a morality, because then there are rules that people follow, and then there's social cohesion, and this leads to reproduction, and then the traits of good behavior are passed along, let's say. All right, to review, moral realism is the view that there are objective truths about morality, so-called moral facts. Mackie's going to argue against moral realism and establish his error theory. His error theory is the view that people are inclined to think they state moral facts when expressing their opinions. But they are wrong to do so because there aren't moral facts. He argues from the relativity of morality to specific cultures that there are no moral facts. So it seems like there are moral judgments that aggregate around cultures and groups, and these moral systems disagree with one another. And what best explains this disagreement is not that each group is wrong, but that there's no final fact to adjudicate the disagreement between them. And then finally, he argues that it would be strange for moral qualities like goodness and fairness to arise independent of the human mind. It would be strange if the physical world in itself and independent of the human mind already contained within it, ready for us to discover, facts about the rightness and wrongness, goodness and badness of our behavior.